In the vast gleaming corridors of the Galactic Interstellar Academy, a lone figure walked with quiet determination. Jaewon Park was not like other students who had come before him. He was different. At first glance, he looked ordinary. A young man of average height, with muscles that spoke of years of dedicated training and eyes that held a depth of experience far beyond his years. The academy was a marvel of cosmic engineering, a place where species from across the universe gathered to learn, compete, and grow. Massive windows showed endless starscapes, and hallways echoed with languages from 1,000 different worlds. But today, something was different. The alien student stopped and stared as Jaewon moved through the corridors. He carried a small bag, his movements smooth and controlled. Years of boxing had taught him more than just how to fight. They had taught him how to move, how to observe, how to survive. The other students whispered. Some laughed. Most looked confused. A human? Here, in the most prestigious combat academy in the known galaxy, Jaewon had grown used to such reactions. Back on Earth, he had been a 3-time national boxing champion. But here, he was something else entirely. An anomaly, a curiosity, a potential joke waiting to happen. The alien students saw a small human. What they didn't see was the warrior beneath the surface. The academy's central hall was a massive circular room, with gravity generators that allowed students from different planetary environments to move comfortably. Crystalline walls reflected light in impossible patterns, and holographic displays showed combat simulations from across the universe. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved about, some with multiple limbs, some floating, some covered in protective shells. A group of Viridian students, massive creatures with 6 powerful arms and exoskeletons that looked like living armor, watched Jaewon with open contempt. Their leader, a particularly large individual named Kiro, nudged his companions. "Look," he said in the universal translation language, "another human thinking they can compete with real warriors." Jaewon heard everything. He always heard everything. It was a skill he had developed long before coming to this academy. The ability to listen, to understand, to prepare. The registration desk was manned by a translucent being that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. It looked at Jaewon's documents, ran them through a complex scanning system, and then spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Jaewon Park, Earth, boxing champion, martial arts specialization. The words hung in the air almost like a challenge. Other students turned to look. Some snickered, others looked curious. A few seemed genuinely interested in this small human, who had somehow made it into the most elite combat training facility in the galaxy. Jaewon knew what they were thinking. Humans were considered technological beings, not warriors. They were diplomats, scientists, engineers, not fighters. Certainly not champions capable of competing with species that had evolved for thousands of years in harsh combat environments. But Jaewon was different. His years of boxing had taught him something that most species didn't understand. Fighting was more than strength. It was about strategy, about understanding your opponent, about controlling the rhythm of combat. As he walked towards his assigned living quarters, the hallways seemed to watch him. Holographic displays tracked his movement. Sensors analyzed his body language. The academy was always watching, always evaluating. Kiro and his group continued to watch. They saw a small human. What they didn't see was the storm that was about to be unleashed. The first day was always the hardest. First impressions meant everything in a place like this. And Jaewon knew that he would need to prove himself quickly, not just as a fighter, but as a representative of humanity. His room was simple: a sleeping pod, training equipment, a small personal storage unit. But to Jaewon, it was more than just a room. It was his first step into a larger universe, a chance to show what humans could really do. As the artificial sun of the academy began to set, casting strange colors through the crystalline walls, Jaewon sat down and began to stretch. Tomorrow would be the first training session. Tomorrow, everything would change. The galaxy was about to learn something about humans, and Jaewon Park was going to be the one to teach them. The training arena was unlike anything Jaewon had ever seen. Gravity fluctuated. Holographic obstacles appeared and disappeared, and students from different planetary environments moved in ways that would seem impossible on Earth. Some floated, some crawled, some moved with multiple limbs in complex patterns. Kiro watched from the sidelines, his 6 arms crossed, his exoskeleton glinting under the artificial lights. He wasn't just watching, he was studying J1, looking for weaknesses. The human seemed small, almost fragile compared to the other combat trainees. But there was something about his movements that made Cairo uncomfortable. The first training exercise was a simple combat simulation. Students would pair up, using a mix of physical and technological combat techniques. When the instructor called out the pairings, J1 found himself matched with a Zarlian, a species known for their incredible reflexes and bone-crushing strength. His opponent towered over him, at least 3 feet taller, with skin that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. The Zarlian looked down, mandibles clicking in what could only be described as a laugh. "Human," it said through the translation device, "you should step back. This will be uncomfortable for you." Jaewon said nothing. He had heard these words before. On Earth, in underground boxing rings and national championships, people always underestimated him. People always thought they knew better. The combat simulation began. Holographic barriers created a complex environment, shifting platforms, energy walls, sudden gravity changes. Most students relied on their natural physical advantages. Jaewon relied on something different, pure technique. His first move surprised everyone. Instead of attacking directly, he moved. Not just moved, he flowed. Years of boxing had taught him that combat was about rhythm, about understanding space and movement. The Zarlian's first strike missed completely, Jaewon sliding, just centimeters away from a blow that would have crushed a normal human. Kiro leaned forward. Something was different about this human. The other students began to pay attention. The Zarlian became frustrated. Each powerful strike missed. Each attempt to grab or crush was redirected with minimal movement. Jaewon wasn't just defending, he was teaching a lesson in combat efficiency. During a break, Kiro approached with his group. "Impressive trick," he said, his multiple arms moving in a complex gesture of mock respect. "But tricks don't win real fights." Jaewon looked at him. No words, just a look that seemed to cut through all the bravado. The next training module was even more complex. Students had to navigate a 3-dimensional combat space, using both physical skills and technological interfaces. Most relied on their natural advantages, energy weapons, extra limbs, unique physiological capabilities. Jaewon used something different: timing, balance, understanding. He moved between energy barriers like water, using the environment as an extension of his own body. Where other students saw obstacles, he saw opportunities. Where they used brute force, he used precision. Kiro watched, his initial mockery turning into something else. Not quite respect. Not yet. But something close to curiosity. The instructor, a massive being that seemed to be part machine, part organic material, watched Jaewon with increasing interest. Humans were rarely selected for this level of combat training. Most were assigned to diplomatic or technological roles. But this human was different. During the final exercise, tension built. Kiro's group of alien students had been whispering, plotting. They wanted to show the human his place. They wanted to break his spirit. They didn't realize they were about to make a mistake. As the training session ended, Kiro accidentally pushed Jaewon. It was a calculated move, designed to humiliate, designed to show dominance. Jaewon's response was nothing like what they expected. He didn't fall. He didn't get angry. He simply looked at Kiro, a smile playing on the corner of his mouth. A smile that said everything and nothing. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. The other students felt it. Something had changed. The human wasn't just another student. He was a challenge. He was a threat. The challenge came 3 days after Jaewon's arrival. The Academy's main combat arena was a massive circular space. designed to simulate multiple fighting environments. Holographic projectors could create anything from desert landscapes to zero-gravity zones in seconds. Kiro's voice echoed through the hall. "Human," he called out, his 6 arms stretched wide. "Let's see what you're really made of." The entire academy seemed to stop. Students from 100 different planets turned to watch. J1 understood challenges, not just as physical confrontations, but as moments of truth. Back on Earth, he had fought in underground boxing rings where losing meant more than just a match. Here, it was about something bigger: pride, reputation, the honor of an entire species. The arena's systems began to activate. A standard combat zone materialized, part rocky terrain, part open space, with gravity set to a neutral point that would challenge both participants equally. This wasn't just a fight. This was a performance. Cairo moved first. His 6 arms were weapons, each capable of generating enough force to crush human bones. He expected J1 to be afraid. Humans were supposed to be afraid. They were supposed to break. But J1 wasn't most humans. His first move was defensive, a simple sidestep that made Kiro's initial strike miss completely. The alien's massive body carried momentum, slightly off balance. A rookie mistake that boxing had taught J1 to exploit. The watching students began to whisper. This wasn't going as they expected. Kiro's attacks came faster. Energy pulses shot from his exoskeleton. Technological enhancements that would have destroyed most opponents. J1 moved like water, using minimal energy, reading the attacks before they happened. Years of boxing had taught him something fundamental. Fighting wasn't about strength. It was about understanding, reading, predicting. A senior instructor watched carefully. She was a veteran of 100 different combat systems, and something about the human's movements caught her attention. This wasn't just technique. This was art. Kiro grew frustrated. Each attack missed. Each attempt to corner the human failed. J1 wasn't just defending. He was teaching a lesson in combat efficiency. The arena's holographic systems began to change. Rocky terrain shifted. Gravity fluctuated. Most fighters would struggle. J1 adapted instantly. Each change became an opportunity, not a challenge. Halfway through the match, something changed. The watching students realized this wasn't just a fight. This was a statement. A small human was showing an entire galaxy what human potential looked like. Kiro's final attack was desperate. All 6 arms moving, energy weapons charging, body twisted into a complex attack pattern that had destroyed countless opponents. It looked unbeatable. J1 saw the attack coming before it happened. One simple movement. A step. A redirect. Suddenly, Kiro's massive body was off balance. Years of boxing training condensed into a single moment of perfect timing. The arena went. Silent. Kiro crashed to the ground, not defeated by strength, defeated by understanding. The senior instructor stepped forward. Her translator crackled with something close to excitement. "Impressive," she said, looking at J1. "Very impressive." Students from different planets stared. Some looked shocked, some looked impressed, a few looked afraid. Kiro stood up, his exoskeleton slightly damaged. For the first time, he looked at J1 with something beyond contempt. There was a hint of respect. The challenge was more than a fight. It was a message. Humans weren't what everyone thought they were. They were something else entirely. As J1 walked from the arena, the watching students made a path. No one spoke. No one needed to. Something had changed in the galaxy that day. And it had started with one human. In one moment. In one fight. The aftermath of J1's victory spread through the academy like a wave. Students from different planets began to look at him differently. He wasn't just another human anymore. He was something more. Training became intense. The academy's instructors started to study his techniques, trying to understand how a human could move so differently. J1's boxing background wasn't just a skill. It was a completely different approach to combat. Kira watched from a distance. His group of alien students no longer laughed or mocked. They studied. They tried to understand. The next training module was designed to be impossible. Students would navigate a complex three-dimensional combat space using technology, physical skills, and environmental awareness. Most aliens relied on their natural advantages: extra limbs, energy weapons, unique sensory systems. Jae-won used something entirely different. His first move shocked everyone. Where others saw obstacles, he saw opportunities. The training space was a maze of energy barriers, shifting platforms, and random gravity changes. Most students became confused. Jae-won became fluid. He moved like water. Each step was calculated. Each movement had a purpose. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about understanding the entire environment. The senior instructor, a being part machine, part organic material, watched with increasing interest. Humans were rarely selected for advanced combat training. Most were assigned to diplomatic or technological roles. But this human was breaking every expectation. During one exercise, Jae-won faced a quantum striker, a species known for their ability to predict and counter attacks before they happened. Their neural networks were supposed to be unbeatable. Most fighters would be crushed within seconds. Jae-won did something unexpected. Instead of fighting their prediction system, he created unpredictability. His movements became a form of controlled chaos. Years of boxing had taught him that true combat was about breaking patterns, not following them. The quantum striker's systems began to fail. For the first time in Academy history, their predictive combat technology couldn't read an opponent. Other students watched in amazement. This wasn't just fighting. This was something else entirely. Kiro approached during a break. His 6 arms moved carefully. "How?" he asked. Not with anger. With genuine curiosity, Jae-won smiled. "Rhythm," he said simply. "Fighting is about rhythm." The explanation meant nothing to the alien students, but something in his voice suggested there was more to the story. The Academy's training became a proving ground. Each day, Jae-won showed something new. Where others saw limitations, he saw possibilities. His human background, something most aliens considered a weakness, became his greatest strength. During a zero-gravity combat simulation, he moved differently from other students. While they struggled with three-dimensional movement, he understood something fundamental about motion and balance. Boxing had taught him to move in ways most species couldn't comprehend. Rumors began to spread. Other human students heard about the boxer who was changing everything. Communication networks across different planetary systems started discussing this unexpected human champion. The senior instructor called Jae-won aside one afternoon. "You're changing how we understand combat," she said through her translator. Her multifaceted eyes studied him carefully. Jae-won said nothing. He didn't need to. Each training session became a lesson, not just in fighting but in understanding. The alien students who once mocked him now watched carefully. They were learning something important. Humans were not what they thought. As the training cycle continued, Jae-won remained focused. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply being himself. A boxer, a human. Someone who understood that true strength was about more than physical power. The galaxy was watching, and everything was about to change. The final combat evaluation approached with tension building across the entire academy. Jae-won stood calm, surrounded by students from 100 different worlds. Kira watched from the sidelines, no longer with anger, but with a strange mix of respect and curiosity. The assessment was brutal. Students would face a comprehensive combat challenge that tested every possible fighting skill. Technology, physical, strength, strategic thinking, nothing was off limits. Most would fail. Some would be seriously injured. Jae-won's approach was different from everyone else's. While other students prepared with advanced weapons and complex technological enhancements, he did something simple. He stretched. He breathed. He centered himself. The first phase tested technological combat skills. Students used complex energy weapons and neural interfaces. Jae-won used something simpler, pure human adaptability. Where others relied on technology, he relied on timing and understanding. His movements surprised the judges. He didn't fight the system, he worked with it. Each technological challenge became an opportunity, not an obstacle. Cairo watched carefully. The human was doing something impossible, breaking every rule of combat training. The second phase tested physical combat. Students from species with multiple limbs, massive strength, incredible reflexes prepared to dominate. Jae-won moved like water. His boxing training had taught him something fundamental. Combat was about rhythm, not raw power. One by one, other students fell. Complex technological systems failed. Impressive physical abilities became useless. Jae-won remained standing. The senior instructor approached. Her translation device carried a mix of emotions. "Interesting," she said, which for her was high praise. The final challenge was a complete combat simulation. Students would face a scenario designed to test every possible fighting skill. Most would break. Some would be destroyed. Jae-won saw it differently. Where others saw a challenge, he saw a dance. Each movement calculated, each step purposeful. His boxing background wasn't just a skill, it was a complete way of understanding combat. The simulation pushed everyone to their limits. Energy weapons fired, gravity changed, environmental conditions shifted impossible ways. Students from powerful species began to fail. Jae-won adapted. His final moment came unexpectedly. A complex combat scenario that would have destroyed any other fighter. He didn't fight. He understood. Each movement was a lesson in human potential. When it ended, silence filled the arena. Kiro was the first to speak. "Impressive," he said, his 6 arms moving in a gesture of respect. The word carried more weight than any previous challenge. The senior instructor stepped forward. Her multifaceted eyes studied Jae-won carefully. "You've changed everything," she said. The translation device carried more than words. It carried understanding. News spread quickly, not just through the academy, but across multiple star systems. A human had done something impossible. He had shown that humanity was more than anyone believed. Jae-won didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. The victory was about something bigger than himself. It was about showing what humans could do. That evening, other students approached him, not to challenge, not to mock, but to learn. Kiro walked up last. His massive frame seemed different now. "Teach me," he said simply. The galaxy watched, and everything changed. Jae-won smiled, just a small smile. But it said everything. Humans were not what they thought.